After my husband vanished without a trace, I thought my world had ended. But nothing could have prepared me for the truth that would come years later and change everything I thought I knew. Stay with me through this story, and if it hits your heart the way it hit mine, you can show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. My name is Claire Miller. I was 34 when my husband Daniel disappeared. It was a rainy Tuesday night when he told me he was going out to get gas. I remember the sound of the door closing, the way the rain was hitting the windows, and how I kept glancing at the clock, expecting him to come back any minute. But he never did. The hours turned into days. I called the police, filed a report, and begged them to search. They told me there were no signs of a struggle. His wallet and phone were at home. His car was gone. It was as if he had simply decided to walk out of our lives without a word. The first few weeks were the hardest. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. Every sound outside made me jump, thinking it might be him coming back. My friends tried to be there for me, but most of them moved on with their own lives after a while. I was left with questions that no one could answer. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take any more, Daniel's mother, Evelyn, fell seriously ill. She had always been a quiet, proud woman, the kind who hated asking for help. But now she needed someone every single day. Maybe it was the love I still felt for Daniel. Maybe it was just the way I was raised, but I couldn't turn my back on it. So, I moved into her small house on the edge of town. I became her caretaker, cooking meals, making sure she took her medication, driving her to every doctor's appointment. She was bedridden most days, and it felt like she had aged 20 years overnight. Money was tight. I picked up shifts at 2 different jobs just to keep us both afloat. There were days I'd come home after midnight, exhausted, only to find she needed help with something small, like getting an extra blanket or fixing the TV. And I'd do it, because that's what I thought family was supposed to do. Years passed like that. No dating, no vacations, no nights out with friends. Just work and taking care of Evelyn. Sometimes, late at night, I'd look at the old photo albums. Pictures of Daniel and me laughing in the kitchen, holding hands at the park, and I'd wonder what I'd done wrong. I told myself he must have been in trouble, or maybe even gone forever. But deep down, I think I knew there was more to the story. I just didn't know that one day, the truth would come crashing into my life in a way I could never forget. The days slowly turned into a routine I never imagined for myself. Every morning, I woke up before the sun, made Evelyn's breakfast, helped her sit up, and made sure she took her medication. She was completely bedridden most days, her chronic illness making it hard for her to even lift a glass of water. After getting her settled, I'd rush to my first job at a small cafe downtown. I'd work the morning shift, then hurry across town to my second job at a grocery store. By the time I got back to Evelyn's house, it would be dark, and I'd still have to make dinner, clean up, and check her blood pressure before I could even think about sitting down. My friends told me more than once that I was wasting my life. "Claire, you're 34, they'd say. You should be traveling, dating, living, not stuck taking care of someone else's mother." But every time they said it, I felt a sting of guilt. I would tell them I owed it to Daniel's family. After all, Evelyn had lost her son. How could I abandon her when she had no one else? As time passed, Evelyn became completely dependent on me. I fed her, cleaned her room, took her to every single doctor appointment. She relied on me for everything, big or small. Some days she was kind and thankful. Other days she was short-tempered and demanding. But I told myself it was the illness talking. Years slipped away. I didn't go on dates. I didn't take vacations. My social life disappeared completely. My world became work and caregiving, nothing else. I didn't even have time to sit in a cafe and read a book anymore. Still, whenever I felt myself questioning if I was doing the right thing, I'd remember the early days with Daniel. Little flashes would play in my mind like short movies. Him spinning me around the kitchen while music played on the radio. Us sitting in the park, laughing about something silly. That soft smile he used to give me when he thought I wasn't looking. Those memories were like a lifeline, reminding me why I was still here, why I kept going. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking, if he came back tomorrow, I could tell him I never gave up on his family. It was a strange sort of comfort, believing that maybe somehow he'd know I had stayed loyal. But there were also nights when the loneliness crept in. I'd lie in the small guest room at Evelyn, staring at the ceiling, wondering what my life might have looked like if Daniel hadn't left. I'd hear the ticking of the old wall clock, the only sound in the quiet house, and feel the weight of all the years I'd given up. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself this was love in its purest form. But deep down, a small voice kept asking, "And what about you, Claire? Who's taking care of you?" It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind where the house felt too still. Evelyn had fallen asleep in her recliner after lunch, and I decided to use the time to tidy up her bedroom. She wasn't the type to let anyone go through her things, but I needed to make space in the dresser for her fresh laundry. While stacking neatly folded sweaters, my hand brushed against something wedged at the back of the bottom drawer. I pulled it out and found a plain white envelope, thick and slightly yellowed with age. Across the front, in Evelyn's handwriting, were the words, "To be opened if I'm gone." My heart gave a strange thump. I hesitated, glancing toward the living room to make sure she was still asleep. Then curiosity got the better of me. I slid my finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Daniel, my Daniel, with his arm wrapped around a woman I had never seen before. They stood on a sunny beach, smiling at the camera, the ocean stretching out behind them. The strangest part? I knew we had never been to a beach resort like that together. Not once in all our years of marriage. For a moment, I couldn't move. The air felt thick in my lungs. I ran my thumb over Daniel's face in the picture, my mind racing. Who was she? Why was he there with her? When was this taken? My stomach churned with a mix of confusion and dread. Just then, I heard a soft shuffle behind me. I turned, and there was Evelyn, leaning in the doorway. Her eyes locked on the photograph in my hands. Her face tightened, and her voice was calm but firm. "Don't go digging up the past, honey. It'll only hurt you." I stared at her, trying to read her expression. She didn't look surprised to see the photo. In fact, she looked resigned, almost like she had been expecting this moment. "Where did this come from?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Evelyn sighed and eased herself into the chair by the window. "Some things are better left alone, Claire. Trust me. Let sleeping dogs lie." I wanted to push, to demand answers, but something in her tone made me freeze. It wasn't just avoidance, it felt like a warning. I put the photograph back in the envelope and slipped it into my pocket. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to keep my face neutral. "Sure, Evelyn," I said quietly. "I'll drop it." But I knew I wouldn't. The rest of the afternoon passed in slow motion. I went through the motions, cooking dinner, helping Evelyn with her medication, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. That photo had cracked something open inside me. I told myself it could be nothing. Maybe it was taken before we met. Maybe she was just a friend. But deep down I knew better. Something was wrong, and the truth was waiting to be found. It happened late one night, the kind of night when the air felt heavy and the only sound in the house was the ticking of the wall clock. Evelyn had been feeling unwell all day, so I'd given her medication earlier than usual. By the time I went to check on her, she was half asleep in her bed, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting shadows across the room. I was adjusting her blanket when she mumbled something under her breath. At first, I thought she was just talking in her sleep, but then the words became clearer. He wanted to leave, but I told him she'd never forgive him. I froze. My hands stilled on the blanket. He wanted to leave. My heart started pounding. Who was he? And she? Was she talking about me? I leaned in slightly. "Evelyn, what did you just say?" I whispered. Her eyes stayed closed, her breathing slow and steady, as if she hadn't heard me. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it, if maybe my tired brain had just made the words up. But no, I knew what I'd heard. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her, my mind racing. Could she have been talking about Daniel? The idea lodged itself in my chest like a thorn. I'd spent years telling myself his disappearance was a mystery, maybe even something tragic. But if Evelyn knew he wanted to leave, and she had told him something to stop him. The next morning, I decided to bring it up casually over breakfast. She was sipping her tea when I asked, "Evelyn, last night you said something in your sleep. Something about someone wanting to leave." Her eyes flicked up at me, just for a split second, before she smiled faintly. "Oh, I don't remember saying anything, dear. You must have been dreaming." I held her gaze for a moment, searching for any sign she was lying. But her face was calm, her tone light, like the conversation meant nothing. She even chuckled softly, as if the idea of her saying something odd in her sleep was amusing. But it wasn't amusing to me. The rest of the day, I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head. He wanted to leave, but I told him she'd never forgive him. It fit too neatly into the puzzle pieces I'd been collecting. Daniel disappearing, the photograph with the mystery woman, Evelyn's strange warning to let the past rest. I tried to push it aside, telling myself it might have been about someone else entirely. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. It was about Daniel. And if Evelyn had known something all along, then I'd been living in her house, caring for her, all while she kept the truth from me. That night, as I lay awake in the dark, one thing became clear. I could no longer pretend that Daniel's disappearance was just an accident of fate. Something was wrong, and the cracks in the story were starting to show. It happened suddenly. One morning, Evelyn complained of sharp chest pains and trouble breathing. I called an ambulance, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. Within minutes, paramedics were in the living room, and I was riding with her to the hospital, the sound of the siren cutting through my thoughts. The next few hours were a blur. Doctors rushing in and out, machines beeping, nurses adjusting 4 lines. When they finally stabilized her, they told me she'd suffered a minor heart attack and would need to stay for observation. I sat in the chair beside her bed, staring at the pale, fragile woman I'd cared for all these years. It hit me then, she might not have much time left. And if she really did know something about Daniel, this could be my only chance to get the truth. That night, when the ward was quiet and the hallway lights dimmed, I leaned closer to her bed. "Evelyn," I said softly, "I need you to tell me what really happened to Daniel. Please. I've been living with this for years, and I can't keep guessing anymore." For a long moment, she just looked at me, her eyes tired but sharp. Then, with a slow breath, she said, "Daniel left, to be with someone else." The words felt like a punch to my chest. "What?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "He wanted to tell you," she continued, her tone almost matter-of-fact. "But I told him not to. I said it would be better if you thought he was gone, rather than knowing he chose another woman over you. I didn't want you to go through more humiliation." Humiliation. That's the word she used, as if lying to me, letting me wonder if my husband was dead, was some kind of mercy. I couldn't speak at first. My mind was trying to process it all, years of caring for her, sacrificing my own life, believing we shared the same grief over losing him. And all along she knew. Not only did she know, but she had helped him disappear from my life. My hands clenched in my lap. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I gave up everything for you. I thought we were in this together." Evelyn looked away, her face unreadable. "I did what I thought was best." I stood up, my legs unsteady. I couldn't bear to look at her anymore. I stepped out into the hallway, my chest tight, my eyes burning. Everything I had believed for the past several years had just been ripped apart. That night, as I sat alone in my car before driving home, one thought kept repeating in my head. I had spent years caring for the very woman who had helped my husband walk out of my life. And now I knew the truth. I had been betrayed twice over. After that night in the hospital, I couldn't get Evelyn's confession out of my head. Her words played over and over. Daniel left to be with someone else. The weight of it sat heavy on my chest, but it also lit a spark I hadn't felt in years. I thought about the photograph I'd found in her dresser, the one of Daniel with his arm around that mystery woman at a sunny beach resort. At the time, I hadn't known where it was taken. But now, knowing he'd left me for someone else, I couldn't ignore it anymore. That picture had to be a clue. I pulled it out from the envelope I'd hidden in my own drawer. I studied every detail, the style of the lounge chairs, the color of the umbrellas, the name of the beach bar just barely visible in the background. It wasn't much, but it was enough. That night, I sat at my laptop and typed every combination of words I could think of into Google. After an hour, I found it, the exact same beach bar, same chairs, same umbrellas. It was part of a mid-range resort in Florida. My stomach flipped. We had never gone to Florida together. The next morning, I called the hotel. My heart pounded as I asked the receptionist if they had any record of a Daniel Miller staying there several years ago. She asked for the year, and I guessed 2 years after he disappeared. After a few clicks on her keyboard, she said, "We don't have a Daniel Miller for that date, but we do have a D. Millen. Could that be it? A fake name?" My throat went dry. "Possibly," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Was he traveling alone?" There was a pause, then the receptionist replied, "No, he checked in with a Melissa Harper." Melissa Harper. The name hit me like a jolt. I knew that name. She had been part of Daniel's friend group years ago, back when we were first dating. I remembered her as the pretty, outspoken one, someone I'd always assumed was just a casual friend. I thanked the receptionist and hung up, my hands shaking. My mind was racing now. If Melissa was the woman in the photo, that meant she wasn't just a fling. She had been in his life before, which also meant Evelyn probably knew her. Suddenly, everything felt sharper, more real. The pieces were falling into place. Evelyn's warning not to dig up the past, her slip of the tongue, the years she let me believe Daniel was gone forever. And now this name, Melissa, pulled from the shadows of our past like a ghost. I stared at the photo again, my pulse thudding in my ears. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. I had a name, a place, and a timeline. For the first time since Daniel disappeared, I had a clear trail to follow. And I was going to follow it, no matter where it led. Melissa's name became the key I couldn't stop turning over in my mind. I searched online, combing through social media, public records, anything that could tell me where she might be now. It didn't take long to find her. She was living in a small town 2 states away, and she wasn't hiding. There were Facebook posts of her at community events, photos of a cozy-looking house with a freshly painted porch. One sunny Saturday, I got in my car and started driving. The trip took hours, but I barely noticed. My hands gripped the steering wheel the entire way, my mind locked on the possibility of finally seeing the man who had vanished from my life without a trace. When I reached the town, I parked near the main street and started asking casual questions in local shops. It didn't take much. People knew Melissa, friendly, well-liked. When I mentioned Daniel's name, most people didn't react. But when I showed one older clerk the photo from the resort, she smiled faintly and said, "Oh, that's Melissa's husband. He works over at the hardware store." Husband. The word rang in my ears as I drove toward the store. I parked across the street, my heart slamming in my chest. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then I saw him. Daniel. He walked out of the store carrying a box of nails, talking to another man. His hair was a little thinner, his frame broader, and his face had more lines, but it was him. No question. A gold wedding band glinted on his finger. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My pulse roared in my ears. Then Melissa appeared, walking toward him with a shopping bag in one hand and a little boy trailing behind her. The boy couldn't have been more than 6. Moments later, a young girl, maybe 4, ran up to Daniel, squealing "Daddy," before he scooped her into his arm. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. He wasn't dead. He wasn't hiding in fear or danger. He was alive, well, and living a picture-perfect life with someone else. While I'd spent years working myself to exhaustion caring for his mother, grieving a man who had chosen to disappear. I couldn't breathe. My hands were trembling so badly I thought I might drop my phone. A mix of shock, rage, and heartbreak twisted in my chest until I thought it would crush me. I stayed in my car, watching as they all laughed and walked toward their SUV. Melissa reached up and kissed him on the cheek, and my stomach turned. I wanted to throw open the door, scream his name, make him see me standing there. But I didn't. Not yet. This wasn't the time. Not until I knew exactly how I was going to make him, and everyone else, feel the weight of what they'd done to me. The drive home from Melissa's town felt longer than the trip there, but I didn't feel tired. I felt wired, like every nerve in my body was on high alert. I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. Daniel's laugh, the way Melissa's hand rested on his arm, the children calling him Daddy. It wasn't grief anymore that I felt. It was pure, concentrated fury. By the time I pulled into Evelyn's driveway, I had already decided I wasn't going to confront him blindly. No screaming in the middle of the street. No emotional outburst he could dismiss as crazy ex-wife drama. No, this was going to be calculated. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer in the city. I didn't tell Evelyn where I was going. She thought I was out running errands, and I let her believe that. Sitting across from the lawyer, I laid out the whole story. Daniel's disappearance, the years of no contact, Evelyn's confession, and my recent discovery that he was alive and well. The lawyer listened quietly, jotting notes, and when I was done, she leaned back in her chair. "Claire," she said, "you're still legally married to him. That means you have rights, spousal support, division of marital property, and in this case, a very strong claim for desertion." The words sank in slowly. Still married. That meant everything he had built with Melissa, every paycheck, every asset. Legally, I had a claim. I almost laughed at the irony. He had erased me from his life, but on paper, I was still there, tied to him in the one way that actually mattered in court. We went over my options. If I filed for divorce citing abandonment, he could be ordered to pay years of back spousal support. And since he'd never legally dissolved our marriage before building a new life, it could cause him more trouble than he ever imagined. When I left the office, the sun was bright, but everything around me seemed sharper, colder. I had a plan now. Back at Evelyn's, I kept my face neutral. She had no idea I'd found Daniel. No idea I'd seen him with Melissa and the kids. No idea I was already laying the groundwork to blow his perfect little life apart. I cooked dinner. I asked about her day. I sat with her through her favorite TV shows, nodding at all the right moments. But inside, my mind was busy, turning over every detail, every possible way to make him feel the years of loss and pain he had left me. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to take from him the one thing he valued most, his comfort, his security, his money. And when I was finished, he wouldn't just lose me. He'd lose the life he'd built on the foundation of my pain. Claire had rehearsed the moment 100 times in her head, but nothing prepared her for the reality of standing on that front porch. The house was neat, middle class, painted a pale yellow with white trim. Wind chimes tinkled in the breeze. She could smell fresh-cut grass. It was the kind of life Daniel had stolen from her and given to someone else. She knocked firmly, each rap echoing in her chest. The door swung open, and a woman with kind eyes and a ponytail appeared. Melissa Harper. Claire knew her face instantly from the resort's guest list. She looked curious but cautious. "Yes," Melissa asked. "I'm here for Daniel," Claire said evenly, though her heart was pounding. Melissa turned, calling over her shoulder. "Dan? Someone's here for you." Footsteps approached. Then there he was, Daniel Miller. Older, softer around the waist. A little less hair, but still him. The man who had vanished from her life without a trace. His eyes locked onto hers, and all color drained from his face. "Claire," he whispered, like her name burned his tongue. Melissa looked between them, confusion knitting her brow. You know her? Claire took a slow step forward, her voice calm but laced with steel. Know me? I'm his wife, the one he abandoned, the one who spent years taking care of his sick mother while he was out here, playing happy husband to you. Melissa's eyes widened. His wife? Daniel told me. He told me you died in a car accident years ago. Claire almost laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Funny. I was alive enough to clean his mother's bedpans, pay her bills, and sit by her hospital bed while she cried over her missing son. All while he was right here. Melissa's face shifted from shock to fury. She turned on Daniel. You told me you were a widower. You married me. We have children, Daniel. From somewhere inside, two little voices called out. Mom. Small feet pattered down the hall, and Claire's stomach twisted as two young kids peeked around the corner. The scene spun into chaos. Melissa's voice rose, shaking with rage and betrayal. Daniel tried to grab her arm. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Get out of my house, she screamed, her voice breaking. The children began to cry, their confusion cutting through the thick tension. Claire stood rooted, a quiet storm in the doorway, watching the life Daniel had built crumble in seconds. Neighbors began drifting to their porches, drawn by the shouting. Finally, Daniel stumbled out, humiliated, avoiding her gaze. Melissa slammed the door behind him. Claire didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply turned, walked back to her car, and drove away, leaving Daniel to face the wreckage of the lies he'd lived in for years. Claire stood in the quiet courtroom, the sound of the judge's gavel sealing the end of a chapter that had nearly broken her. The divorce was final. Daniel, stripped of his smug arrogance, sat 2 rows back with his lawyer, looking like a man who'd lost everything, because in many ways he had. The settlement was generous, a direct result of the desertion charges and years of unpaid spousal support. Claire had fought for every cent, not out of greed, but as repayment for the time, energy, and dignity he'd stolen. When the papers were handed to her, Claire didn't even glance at Daniel. She tucked them into her bag and walked out into the sunlight. It was warm, but the heat felt different now. Less like the weight of a burden, more like the start of something new. Back at Evelyn's house, boxes were already stacked by the front door. Claire had spent the last few weeks quietly packing, avoiding long conversations, avoiding Evelyn's eyes. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her face lined with guilt. Claire, she began, her voice trembling. I never thought it would end this way. I didn't know how to tell you. Claire didn't let her finish. You knew he was alive, she said flatly, her tone devoid of anger now, just tired truth. And you let me live in the dark. Evelyn swallowed hard, tears welling up. I thought I was protecting you. From what? Claire asked, her voice sharp but steady. From the truth? From moving on? No, Evelyn, you protected him. The silence stretched between them, heavy and final. Claire didn't wait for a reply. She turned, picked up a box, and carried it to her car. Trip after trip, she loaded her belongings, clothes, books, a few photo albums, and the mementos she still cared to keep. Each slam of the trunk felt like sealing away another piece of the past she was ready to leave behind. When the last box was in, she stood for a moment, hands resting on the car door. She looked up at the house one final time. It wasn't home anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Evelyn stood on the porch, watching, but Claire didn't wave, didn't speak. She simply slid into the driver's seat, the key turning in the ignition with a soft click. As she drove away, the small smile on her lips wasn't one of joy. It was the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finally taken back what was hers. The years Daniel had stolen were gone, but he would never take another moment from her again. Ahead, the road stretched wide and open. Claire didn't know exactly where it led, but for the first time in years, she was the one choosing the direction. And that was enough. Do you believe Claire made the right choice by cutting all ties and starting over, or should she have given forgiveness a chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if stories like this keep you hooked, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next.